When you're starting any new data projects, you never want to be like wasting time fumbling around finding the right tools. And I feel like it takes a while when you start data engineering to know which tools are the right one, because there are just so many options. But then after a few years, when it comes down to it, there's only like a few simple ones that you really need to know and like be efficient with. And then the rest is kind of like depending on specifics of the project. So here are my top tools for data engineering for 2026. First things first, like any project, like anything in life, you need to be organized. And for that, for me at least, the best tool to do that is Notion. I've actually been a big fan of Notion for the last 6 years, I would say, at least. I have like everything in Notion, from like meal planning, workouts, video projects like this, and also any coding projects. Even my work stuff is in Notion. I think it's just the best like one-in-all organization tool, because you can document everything, which, as we know in software engineering in general, is often like a weak point that we all are guilty of. And you can also still do like ticketing in Notion. I actually worked at a company for a while where all of our data engineering ticketing was done in Notion, which maybe for like a big company I would not recommend, but for many startups that's enough to do it. And for small projects that you do by yourself, it's more than enough to do your ticketing in Notion, and then it can be in the same place as your documentation, which I feel like is also very efficient to reference. One really nice thing is I think Notion is a software, the first time you use it, that can be a bit overwhelming, because you basically start with like a blank page and you have to build everything. But the more you use it, you're gonna start having your own templates. And like for me now, after 6 years, it's super fast to start any new project because I have templates for everything. So it's basically like I just click a button, use the template, fill it out, and then in like 5 minutes my project is ready to start. And whenever I need to reference old stuff or look at past projects I've done, I know I can just go into my Notion, look for it, and just pick the pieces I need for that. But yeah, obviously I think there's a bit of a learning curve on Notion, so feel free to, if you've never used it, actually start by looking at a few tutorials, because I think otherwise you'd get a little discouraged first and just like open it and then not really know what to do on it, close it and never open it again, and I think that's too bad. Once that's set up, the first thing you're gonna need after is a good IDE, and I think, to me, nothing beats VS Code, because it's just like kind of similarly to Notion, it's just the all-in-one coding platform. You can have any language you want, you can have tons of extensions. I think that's like the big plus of VS Code. It's just there's an extension for anything, and I actually really like that you can pick your own themes. I feel like it's very nice to get to personalize an IDE, because I mean, you're gonna spend many hours with that open, so might as well like the interface. And yeah, I think maybe there are some cases when you need like a super specific tool, and then maybe you're gonna switch to another IDE, but to me, VS Code is the best for any language, because most likely on a project you're gonna use, I don't know, like SQL database, then you're gonna use maybe Python, maybe some like JavaScript, some HTML, like any language you need, you can have all of it handled in VS Code. You can run your scripts very easily. It also handles notebooks very easily, which in data can be useful. I'm also not gonna get into AI in this video, because I think that's a specific topic. And I also would say that so far on data engineering, I would say there's not really any specific data tool yet that I've seen that like really improved my workflow, aside from like just basic coding stuff, so using Cursor, Copilot, stuff like that. So that's why I'm only mentioning VS Code, but obviously if you use Cursor, technically that's also just like a wrapper around VS Code, so you're still using VS Code. Quick tips on VS Code is set up a ton of shortcuts. Like notice on your project the like main things you're gonna do in their interface, like running Python code, running certain commands, changing some settings, and then set up shortcuts for all of that. Another extension I find really useful in data we come across very often, like CSVs and Excel files. So I think an extension to handle those files directly in VS Code is also quite useful. Okay, then now we're ready to code basically, but we still have no actual code. But the first thing I would recommend anyone to do is to use Docker. I know it can be annoying, especially on like a small local project that you want to do. Then you're never going to have the issue of running the project on another machine, but you know that everything's going to be installed, keeping track of the packages you use, being able to, like, once you're done, stop the container and just like get on with your day. it just makes for a more cleaner approach. And I also think it makes you look like a better developer because it's like everything's organized. I think it's same thing back to organization. Docker really helps with that. And it's fairly simple to set it up, especially like most basic Python project. You can just have like 6 lines basically that you copy paste for any new project, and that's it. And if you ever want to take your project to like a bigger scale and you're like, oh, actually this like local app that I run, I think it would be like useful for many people, and then you can just very easily copy your Docker to run it on the cloud, and then your app is already working and you won't have to like troubleshoot, oh, this worked on my machine, why is this not working when I deploy it? Because you just have Docker. And I mean, obviously in most companies, they will have some sort of Docker setup as well, so you might as well get super familiar with that tool. I think you don't need to be like an expert at this, but I think just knowing the basics is very important. Okay, next is a bit of a different type of tool that made the list, even though I actually don't really love using it. And I think it's an area in data engineering. If you have an idea of a better software, there is a space for a better one, but it's using dbeaver for anything query related and like checking what's in your databases, the tables, the schemas, everything like that. It's a great software because it's, I mean, open source, it's free, so you can use it for your own projects as well without like needing a license or anything. But unfortunately, I think the UI is still a bit outdated. There are many functionalities that are missing, in my opinion. For instance, I think to like explore a database, and like if you're coming into like a new database that has lots of tables and you're trying to understand the relations between them, clearly not the best tool to do it, but I mean, hey, it's free, so we can't really complain. But yeah, at least makes you able to connect to any type of database and run your queries. So definitely a must know. So next is kind of a similar tool, but this time for APIs instead of databases. It's Postman. I have to say, I actually mostly see software engineers use it, but I think in data, we very often have to use API, especially at work. In like companies, you will need to interact with APIs, get data from them, publish data to them, things like that. And I think it's just a tool that makes this interaction with API much easier, especially because you can have this like collections, you can test APIs, you can test your new endpoints, you can share collections, which is also very useful, especially on like a bigger project. I think it's just smoothed out the interactions that we have with APIs, and it's a very easy to use tool. I think it just helps you get rid of all those like small Python scripts that we do sometimes just to test endpoints or like have to manually run call requests. Now you can do everything in Postman and it's much easier. And lastly, because I think that only is something you need at like the end of a project, I'm gonna talk about Airflow, because I know we love to write our own custom ETLs, Python scripts, whatever, but I think it's just not very efficient and extremely not scalable, because then you're gonna, like whenever you want to add tasks or solidify a bit your infrastructure or deploy it, it's just gonna be a nightmare to deal with, and like you're gonna have to maintain it yourself, and over time it's gonna grow into this big like time-consuming machine. And Airflow, just like in a few commands, you can install it on your project and then have your tags running, run your ingestions very easily. It's kind of like a super powerful cron job, but I think it's still fairly simple to set up, and it like kind of gets you to understand the basis of what you need to know, and then you can work your way up to more powerful tools. And that's kind of what this list is. None of those tools I would say are like the most powerful of their categories, but they're simple enough to use and still will save you a lot of time compared to doing things manually or with even simpler tools. So I think they just strike the balance of like gaining time but without adding too much complexity. And I think they just give you this like basic knowledge of all of those different categories of tools that you will need, and once you learn them on those tools, it's going to be very easy to transition to bigger tools. I also think those tools are pretty time-proof, because I've been using all of them for at least a few years. I would say at least 4 years, all of them, from what I can remember. And I think I will still use them in the next 5 years. And I think that's something really important right now, especially with AI and all of those like new tools that come up. It's really important to have your core things that you know you can always rely on, and are also like not too AI dependent, so that you know your stuff. So yeah, that was my list for next year. If you have any other tools that are maybe more niche or I haven't mentioned, please feel free to leave them in the comments and let me know. I mean, obviously I don't know everything. And my light went off, which means time to end the video, and I'll see you in the next one.